Hello, you're watching Midday Report on TVP World. My name is Sascha Farbach. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has landed in Washington, D.C. for his first official visit to the United States since taking office. He's set to hold talks with President Donald Trump, what is being billed as a pivotal moment for transatlantic relations. The face-to-face meeting, their first, comes just weeks into Merz's chancellorship and is expected to set the tone for future cooperation between Berlin and Washington. The agenda is packed with pressing issues: looming U.S. tariffs on European goods, continued American support for Ukraine, and NATO defense commitments. Germany, as Europe's largest economy and the second largest supporter of Ukraine after the U.S., has much at stake. Merz, a 69-year-old conservative from the Christian Democratic Union, has already signaled a more assertive foreign policy, including a pledge to raise Germany's defense spending to 5% of GDP. During today's meeting in the White House, Merz is expected to focus on the substance and on the deal-making mentality of Trump. This is according to Matthias Neles, the CEO of the German-Ukrainian Bureau. Speaking with TVP World, Neles explained that while Merz shares a strong transatlantic mindset with Trump, he'll focus on concrete issues, particularly Germany's rearmament.
Friedrich Merz is an ardent transatlanticist, has been in the private business, and that is a topic that they, both Trump and Merz, can connect on. But he has been, unlike Keir Starmer and President Macron, has been critically rebuking some of Trump's statements since he took over the office of the German Chancellery. So he will not try flattery alone, and he will certainly have studied the humiliation of Zelensky and Ramaphosa. He spoke with both in preparation of this meeting. So he goes into the meeting with no illusions, will try some flattery, but I think he will more or less focus on the substance and on the deal-making mentality of Trump. And this is where he, I think, will try to offer what Germany can bring to the table, which is in particular in the military realm. The Germans are rearming, and that's something that Trump has been calling on. So this is an area where Germans are living up to Trump's expectations, and this is what Merz will try to convince Trump.
Now, NATO countries are under pressure from the United States to significantly increase their defense spending. And U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth told a meeting of NATO defense ministers he expects them to commit spending 5% of GDP by the end of the month. Our correspondent, Alex Kadir, is at that meeting at the NATO HQ in Brussels. So, Alex, what did Secretary Hegseth have to say? Right, so we are connected there, and of course following this story, we'll come back to that at a later time of those special developments in Brussels. With that, let's just move on now. Also in Brussels, Kaja Kallas, the EU's top diplomat, announced the bloc is working on a new sanctions package to increase the pressure on the Kremlin. She also added Ukraine's recent drone attack on Russian military aircraft is, quote, rewriting military history. Kallas delivered the remarks while attending the NATO defense ministers meeting in Brussels.
Really happy that NATO is also expanding the capability targets, which are necessary for these developments of European defense as well. Then second, we don't see any movements on the ceasefire. It's clear that Putin is still playing games, and there is no indication that they want peace. Of course, what we're doing on the European side is to increase the pressure by working on the next package of sanctions. We are hitting a point where the sanctions are really hitting the supply chain, so we will see probably a bigger impact on this in order to pressure also Russia into wanting peace. And then, of course, we have seen over the last weekend these drone attacks of Ukraine that are rewriting the military history. I mean, they used thousands, drones costing thousands to take out planes costing millions. So I think this is clearly bringing the cost up also for the Russians, again, so that Russians would also want peace.
No country at the moment meets the 5% target, said Jan Ruzicka in an interview for TVP World. Let's hear what else he had to say about the new defense budget targets that were outlined at the alliance's meeting in Brussels.
No country at the moment meets the 5% target. When there is a talk about 5%, and it will be agreed, I think there is no doubt about it, Secretary General Rutte and President Trump had pretty much agreed this. The implications will be that everyone across the board will have to ramp up their spending. There are specific areas where clearly European countries will have to spend much more. Secretary General had already hinted at these missile defense, air defenses, command and control capabilities. This will, if it happens, and we are looking at the next decade, significantly potentially upgrade the capabilities of European allies. And it is a chance how to preserve the transatlantic link.
A meeting of the leaders of Poland's ruling coalition was held on Thursday, and it was dedicated to drawing conclusions from the defeat of the coalition's presidential candidate, Rafał Trzaskowski, in the election held last Sunday. Now, pursuant to the situation, the parliament is scheduled to consider Prime Minister Donald Tusk's motion for a vote of confidence in the government on June 11th.
The coalition is doing well. That's what we would like to make clear. We are ready with a plan for the next stage of our term. We have also gone over what the government has accomplished, and this will be important when moving into this new chapter to show our work. We have many of these achievements in the fields of economy, security, digitization, agriculture, and social affairs. We made some concrete decisions with the Prime Minister today concerning what our cooperation will look like in the coming days, but also in the coming weeks, months, and years, I believe. We covered organizational issues, program issues, and issues of government structure. The coalition agreement is still in effect and will continue to be. The issue of a government reshuffle is not controversial in the ranks of the four parties. We all agree that it must happen. For this, we need to prepare reasonably and arrive at a common position. This will take us a month and a half. We will present it at a time when it will not provoke controversy.
Now moving back to Brussels HQ and NATO, and our correspondent Alex Kadir. So tell us a little bit more here, Alex. What did Secretary Hegseth have to say about this 5%?
Well, Pete Hegseth piling on the pressure that was clearly what his boss wants from NATO allies, European and Canadian NATO allies, on spending. He wants to be able to have that win, that big declaration, that big deal at the NATO leaders summit at the end of this month. And that's what we're hearing addressed to the defense ministers here from Pete Hegseth, putting pressure on those NATO allies that are lagging behind on spending. Now, they want a commitment to hit 5%. Let's have a listen to what Pete Hegseth had to say earlier today.
There are a few countries that are not quite there yet. I won't name any names. It's amongst friends in that room. We'll get them there. But from France to Germany, to the Baltics, to the Nordic countries, to Poland, to Greece, to Hungary, to so many more, the commitment is there. 5% on defense spending. When you consider the threats that we face, the urgency in the world, it's critical. We don't need more flags. We need more fighting formations. We don't need more conferences. We need more capabilities. Hard power.
Well, we don't need more conferences, but this, of course, meeting is all about that big meeting of the leaders in The Hague towards the end of this month. The ministers are really now focused here on preparing for that and preparing their strategies on exactly how to get to that 5% number.
So that's a big target of 5%. So let's explore that a little bit more, Alex. So what will countries who spend less have to do now?
Well, they're under a lot of pressure, both from the United States, but also from other NATO allies, like Poland, which have already set out that target of 5%, and for some even above that. So clearly those countries under a lot of pressure. Well, I actually spoke to the defense minister of one of those countries, Spain, which has the target of reaching 2% this year. I asked a very simple question, because, of course, the fear in the room by so many of these ministers is that if the Europeans don't step up, the Americans might walk away. I asked the Spanish defense minister if their lack of spending puts the alliance at risk. This is what she said.
In this moment, 2,000 Spanish soldiers are in the eastern flank, are in Latvia, and Estonia and Romania, I think Spain is one of the countries most committed with the defense of NATO Atlantic. For example, in Turkey, the Spain is the country which has a petrol battery. So I have to tell very proud that the commitment of Spanish armed forces is more superior to the other countries. So I cannot accept this because our soldiers are fighting and able to die if it's necessary, defending the eastern flank, Spanish armed forces.
So that pushback from the Spanish defense minister saying that it's not just about the 5% target, it's not just about the money, it's also how that money is spent, the capabilities that each country brings to the NATO alliance. And we heard something similar from the German defense minister Boris Pistorius yesterday, as well as John Healey, the UK defense secretary. John Healey was saying, well, look, the UK is not announcing a target of 5% now, maybe 3.5 may be the target. But the UK brings a nuclear deterrence. It's the only country that brings its full nuclear deterrence to the alliance. So some of those countries are under a lot of pressure to hit 5%, but they are still justifying and wanting to prove that they are valuable contributors to the NATO alliance.
Well, we'll have their continued pressure indeed. We'll see how that shapes up at that Hague summit. That's coming up soon. We'll hear more from you there, I'm sure. Alex Kadir there in Brussels, thank you so much. Now, Volodymyr Zelensky said he expects action from the United States and Europe after the recent wave of Russian drone strikes against Ukraine. In a social media statement, the Ukrainian president went on to say that this is yet another reason to impose harsher sanctions on Moscow.
Overnight, Ukraine was attacked by 103 drones and one ballistic missile targeting the Donetsk, Kharkiv, Odessa, Sumy, Chernihiv, Dnipro, and Kherson regions. This was another massive strike by terrorists, Russian terrorists who kill our people every night. This is yet another reason to impose maximum sanctions and apply pressure together. We expect action from the United States, Europe, and everyone in the world who can really help change these terrible circumstances. Strength matters, and the war can only end through strength. Moscow must be pressured by all available means and gradually deprived of its ability to continue this aggression.
Ukrainian General Staff announced a successful strike on a Russian missile unit in Russia's Bryansk region. Target, part of the 26th Russian Missile Brigade near the town of Klinsky, was reportedly preparing an attack, likely aimed at Kiev. Thanks to coordinated efforts by Ukraine's armed forces and the security service, one Iskander missile launcher was destroyed and two others were likely damaged. The Russian unit was hit with missiles, though no further details were disclosed. The Iskander is a short-range ballistic missile system widely used by Russia in its war against Ukraine since 2022. After a recent windstorm in Poland, a large tree branch fell on a group of students. 13 people were injured, including 2 children and 1 supervisor. All 3 were quickly hospitalized. The incident took place on Thursday morning on the outskirts of Kazimierz Dolny in southeastern Poland. A group of 40 children had come from Warsaw for a field trip when a tree branch fell on them. Emergency responders have just finished their efforts on the scene. A medical helicopter, ambulances, and 6 fire brigades were all involved in the response. Also, one of Poland's most famous oak trees, called Bartek, sustained some damage during recent storms that swept the country. The tree is a major tourist attraction, a historical symbol, often featured in school textbooks. Turkish prosecutors have launched an investigation into Özgür Özel, the leader of the opposition Republican People's Party, as part of a broader crackdown on opposition figures, centered around Istanbul's mayor, Ekrem İmamoğlu.
Prosecutors have opened a probe into Republican People's Party leader Özgür Özel for allegedly threatening and insulting Istanbul's chief prosecutor, adding to a series of legal actions against opposition figures. This comes amid ongoing tensions following the March arrest of Istanbul Mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu on corruption charges, which he denies. The CHP has condemned the investigation, calling it a part of a lawless system, while the Interior Ministry has dismissed 5 CHP mayors linked to corruption cases. İmamoğlu's arrest triggered protests and accusations of government interference in the judiciary, though the government insists the judiciary is independent.
And that concludes this midday report, but as ever, stay tuned right here for more news and commentary on TVP World. Goodbye.